It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman. You're joined by our Thunder coverage team of beat writer Anthony Slater, joining us from his hotel room in Orlando, where tomorrow night he'll cover the Thunder versus the Magic. Hi, Anthony.
How you doing?
From our home here in chilly Oklahoma City, columnist Jenni Carlson.
Where it's much colder than Orlando, Florida. Boo.
You don't want to know the temperature here right now.
Keep it to yourself, big guy.
I will.
And from his palatial estate in Oklahoma City, our Thunder beat writer Darnell Mayberry.
Hello.
Hey.
That's a nifty little thing. Hey, is that – there you go. There you go, Darnell. Guys, let's start with the Memphis Grizzlies. Of course, last season, that's where the Thunder season ended. Except this week, the Grizzlies came to town with mostly a full complement of players, missing some parts, Tony Allen, and the Thunder handled the Grizzlies. Unlike what they did at the end of last season, Thunder also did it without Russell Westbrook, just like last year. Anthony, we'll start with you. What do we draw from the Memphis victory earlier this week?
You can't take too much, obviously, in the matchup because if these teams meet in the playoffs, you expect Westbrook to be back. You expect Mike Conley to be back, Tony Allen, who didn't play either. But I think the biggest takeaway, at least from my standpoint, I thought was Serge Ibaka's play because he was really bad, especially offensively in the playoff series against Memphis last year. Struggled against that front line of Gasol and Randolph, who both played the other night. And I just think that the fact that he shot 10 of 17, he keeps hitting that mid-range. And even after the game, Memphis coach Dave Yeager was like, those are the shots we gave him in the playoffs. He was just hitting tonight. And, if he's hitting, what can you really do? So I think the biggest positive was his play against that front line, who he's traditionally kind of struggled against.
Darnell, what do you take away from it?
Well, in terms of playoff matchups, I agree with Anthony. I mean, so many guys were missing in that game that I don't think you can really conclude too much. But the one thing that I will take away from it is that Kevin Durant has figured out that Grizzlies defense. I mean, you look at what he did in that game and the last one in Memphis. He's really had success against them now. Tayshaun Prince can't guard him. Tony Allen didn't play, but he can't really guard him as much either. He can help keep the ball out of his hands by being physical. But 31 points, 11 of 21 shooting. 8 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, he really had his way with that team and their defense. So I think what we saw last year without Russell Westbrook, that's not going to happen again if they meet in the first round or the second round this year. With Russell Westbrook back, it's going to be even scarier because Kevin Durant has figured out how to do different things to keep himself engaged and involved in the game, but also get his teammates involved. So I don't think the Memphis Grizzlies can do what they did to Kevin Durant again last year if they meet again in the postseason.
Darnell, do you think this has a chance, though, of being a better Grizzlies team once they round out, once they get all their folks back? So a different coach, sort of a different style. Is there a chance that this is actually a better Memphis team?
Well, I think when you analyze that team, you have to kind of look at the same thing that you do with the Thunder. Those guys have gotten better. Zach Randolph is in his prime. He's probably on the tail end of his prime. Marc Gasol's gotten better. Mike Conley's gotten better. They made the move for Courtney Lee to add some shooting. You saw what he did in that game out in Memphis, lighting up the Thunder for I think it was 24 points. So I think they have gotten better. I still don't know if Dave Yeager is the coach to get them over the hump. I really was high on Lionel Hollins and what he was able to do out with that team and get out of them, maximizing their talents and their group that they had. So I still question whether or not the coaching is going to be better in the postseason, but I do think that they're better from an individual standpoint, just in terms of talent.
We just lost our special correspondent, Millie Reeves. Instead, we'll go to our backup
her
plan.
Her much more boring mother.
And talk to her mother, Jenni Carlson. Jenni, we're talking about the Grizzlies and the game the other night, what to take away from it. Of course, we've talked about how Tony Allen wasn't there. I do remember Tony Allen making life pretty miserable for Kevin Durant in that series. With Tony Allen back, is it going to be, if these two teams meet in the playoffs, are we looking at another death match?
Well, I mean, I think that Tony Allen does bring a whole other element to that team. You saw them really without an answer for Kevin Durant the other night. And a lot of teams don't have an answer for Kevin Durant, but Tayshaun Prince trying to run around and keep up with Kevin Durant definitely wasn't working. He basically had his way. So I think it changes the dynamic for sure. But I think it's interesting because Marc Gasol's just coming back from injury. You've obviously got Mike Conley out, so the Grizzlies presumably will be a different team come playoff time if they do make that one of those last spots. And I don't know what to make of them. It's obviously been a transition year for them. I'm with Darnell. Love Lionel Hollins.
We lost Jenni for a second here. She's her professing her love for Lionel Hollins. Let's switch back to Anthony. Anthony, let's switch back from the Grizzlies to the Thunder. Scott Brooks is at the same time coaching a championship contending team and developing a roster for the future. A rare feat in the NBA. Do you think he gets enough credit for that?
Probably not. I mean, just because obviously when this team wins, the credit usually is going to go to the superstar, especially when you have a guy like Durant who, is kind of in conversation as the best player in the world. But I mean, look what he's doing right now. We kind of, he got some slack last year. He didn't make adjustments without Westbrook. Well, I mean, they've won 11 to 12, 12 to 13 right now without Westbrook. They're making adjustments. Like you said, they're contending. They have pretty much, they're the first NBA team to 40 wins, but he's also developing. Perry Jones is becoming a good role player. Jeremy Lamb, Reggie Jackson's kind of making some strides. Steven Adams, we've talked about it all season. He's kind of adjusting, using his young guys more, like you said, developing players while also having a team that's 40-11 right now and has been missing one of the best players in the world.
Darnell, the storylines for the Thunder, of course, this year, the dominant ones, Kevin Durant's incredible month of January, incredible season, Russell Westbrook's injury, but right there third is the development of young players. George Karl was talking about it. I heard him on the ESPN radio this afternoon. Is there a reason why Brooks is not being sort of noticed for this?
Yeah, I'll give you two reasons. Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. When you got two guys like that, the coach isn't going to get a lot of credit. I mean, most people are naturally going to figure that all the coach is doing is rolling out the ball, and guys like that are going to develop and get you wins. You're going to basically roll out of bed and get 50 wins when you have talent like that. So, I think Scott Brooks hasn't gotten enough credit for what he's done developing the guys, because you're seeing talent all throughout the league that doesn't develop at the rate that the Thunder develops talent. And I think Brooks and his coaching staff really have done a great job of developing that talent. But at the same time, on the flip side, you got Kevin Durant, who just had an incredible January. I don't know how much coaching that is. That's not to take anything away from Scott Brooks. That's giving a lot of credit to Kevin Durant, because the month that he just had, you can't coach that. I mean, Scott Brooks will be the first to tell you that. Kevin Durant was just phenomenal in the month of January.
Jenni, that's a good point by Darnell, but the Thunder was playing 500 ball for a stretch without Russell Westbrook, with Kevin Durant. And all of a sudden, it seems as if the light went on for lots of people, maybe Scott Brooks. Is there something subtle that Scott Brooks has done in the last month that sort of freed Kevin Durant up to get off like he has?
Well, I mean, I think you have to give some credit to the system. I think we've even talked on this hangout in the past about how offensively it may be slight and subtle, but I do think that offensively the sets and the things that they're running are better. It's not sort of the I'm getting asked about colors as I'm talking about Kevin Durant here. Do we have time for colors and Kevin Durant? Yeah, yes. There's yellow right there.
We got two Darnells too.
Yeah, I know. Anthony, what are you being asked about? No, but I do think that you're seeing a better offensive flow. Now, some of that's Kevin Durant. He's improved his passing. He's improved in a lot of those areas, but I think they're getting better movement. I think that offensively around him, he has more to play with, and I think you're seeing him used better, and that's got to be directed back to Scott Brooks to some degree.
To some degree, and also they're hitting their shots. Anthony, Darnell talked about the development of Serge Ibaka. This has got to be, he's having games now or a streak of games that sort of border on the performance he had in the Western Conference Finals against San Antonio. Somebody has helped Serge Ibaka go from a dominant defender to sort of a picturesque stretch four shooter. Who was it?
Well, I think it's Serge Ibaka mainly. I mean, it is the assistant coaches obviously that have helped him out, but I mean, it's just him putting in the work, putting in the time. He works hard after practice. He's worked hard in the off season. It's to the point where if he catches it, he's open from about 16, 18 feet. I mean, you almost feel like it's automatic when he's going up with it. Especially, I mean, he gets them off to really hot starts in games, and I think that's kind of important. I mean, you'll see, most first quarters he's putting up 8, 10 points within the first 8 minutes, and it's been a huge thing. It's probably been the second biggest thing. Well, I mean, maybe it's the Durant, the defense, and then Ibaka. Those are the three main things that have kind of carried this team with Westbrook going out, because Reggie Jackson hasn't been anything. He hasn't been special. I think it's just been those two stars and then the defense as a whole.
You're watching Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. Of course, Thunder Thursday is sponsored by our good friends at Wheeler Chevrolet. Take the drive down I-40, save yourself some time and money. Guys, let's talk. Let's go to the News OK Live page where Anthony referenced Reggie Jackson's performance. Yet a lot of Thunder fans, one of their favorite things to obsess about is Reggie Jackson. The question comes from J.G. Wentworth. I'm really impressed with Reggie Jackson. Do you think he'll stick around and be a backup, or will he be an NBA starter somewhere else? Darnell, I'll address that one to you.
I think he's going to have an opportunity to be a starter somewhere else. I think it's all going to depend on what a team comes at him, what kind of offer a team makes for him. And if the offer is too lucrative for the Thunder, I think, the Thunder's going to have to make a decision, sort of like they did with James Harden. I think a lot of people are thinking now that Reggie Jackson's inconsistency over the last month and a half or so is going to drive down the price. I disagree with that. I think Reggie Jackson is showing some natural warts, being a first-time starter. He's only started about 23 games or so. So he's gonna have some rust, some inconsistency. So I think most GMs and talent evaluators throughout the league see exactly how versatile and athletic he is and what a difference he can make offensively. So I think he's definitely going to have an opportunity to start somewhere else.
Jenny, this is sort of off the News OK Live page. Another question about Reggie Jackson, and Darnell referenced it in his Thunder Rumblings Nuggets off last night's game against Minnesota. Sort of the question of how Scott Brooks and Reggie Jackson are interacting. And we've read this before, but Reggie Jackson is he's earning his stripes as a point guard, as a starting point guard, and it's not all smooth. And Scott Brooks, a guy who played point guard in this league, a guy who helped Russell Westbrook become an all-star point guard, he's got a lot of pointers, a lot of direction for Reggie Jackson. They seem to be knocking heads a bit. Darnell, I may be wrong, maybe referencing the wrong Thunder Rumblings blog. Last night you referenced an interaction between Kevin Durant, Reggie Jackson, but in previous games it's been Scott Brooks and Reggie. A lot of direction, some frustration visible in Reggie Jackson's face. Do we make anything out of that? Is that a sign at all that Reggie might not be as long for Oklahoma City as some would like?
I don't know. I think anytime you've got a competitive coach, and Scott Brooks, while a lot of people around Oklahoma City know him as a guy that, is pretty laid back or looks pretty laid back, when he was a player, he was pretty intense. He had to be as an undersized guy who was not expected to make rosters. And I think he has that sort of personality, and when Reggie Jackson or any other player doesn't do what he wants, and, Reggie Jackson has had some inconsistencies defensively, I think that really gets Scott Brooks going. And so sometimes he gets frustrated and sometimes it comes out, but that doesn't mean they're not trying to do the same thing, which is win, make this the best possible team. And he probably looks at point guards a little bit more, harshly than he does some others, because he expects a lot out of those guys because he knows the position unlike any other.
Anthony, is he harder on Reggie Jackson than he ever was on Russell Westbrook?
Yeah, it seems that way. And I think you can handle Reggie Jackson a little bit differently than you can handle Russell Westbrook, just because I think Reggie takes the criticism maybe a little bit better. He's at a different stage of his career. He doesn't maybe bring as much to the game as Westbrook, where if you're saying that type of stuff to Westbrook, maybe he checks out, maybe he starts throwing up jumpers, maybe he goes and has a tantrum on the bench. So I think he's allowed the freedom to be a little harsher on Reggie. And I mean, Reggie knows. You could play Fisher over him, but Reggie knows right now. He's probably going to get at least 25 to 30 minutes a night. So I think it's a constructive relationship. Maybe he shouldn't be. Maybe Brooks shouldn't be as open on the sidelines with his displeasure with the shot selection or stuff like that at times, just because obviously we can see it, and he may not like that. But I think it's fine. I think their relationship is growing.
Darnell, let's shift gears. Another question off of News OK Live, and this one geared to Kendrick Perkins. The question is, hey, they saw Perk and Zach Randolph slap hands last night and give a little half hug to each other before the tip. Do they hate each other anymore?
I think it's a short fuse between those two. Like, it doesn't take much. So they can be friendly. I mean, they're two of the nicest guys in the league. I mean, that's what people don't know with all the mean mugging and the pushing and shoving that goes on. Sometimes the altercations, verbally, physically. Those two guys are two of the nicest guys in the league, off the court, in the locker room. They're two guys that'll give you the shirt off their backs. I mean, they're just those type of people. But once the ball's thrown up, I mean, they don't really, all the friendliness and all of that goes out of the window. So I've seen them kind of chat each other up at times on the court, and I've kind of been shocked. But I think for the most part, it doesn't take much for those guys to get going again.
Another Perk question. This one I'm going to throw to Jenni. It's from Jim, who points out that Perk performance has been so much better lately. What flipped his switch?
Well, I mean, I think probably part of it was that benching or whatever you want to call it that came in Miami. Now, I think we all agree that was the way to play the Heat, was to play with that smaller lineup. But I think, that sort of thing probably has motivated Perk to some degree, that, he wants to go out there and prove his worth. And in a game like Memphis, for example, the other night, that was a great time for him to step up and play well, and obviously he did. I thought their inside defense on Gasol and Randolph was great. I think Darnell wrote about that in his rumblings. I think we had that in a variety of places, but it was really good, and you can't say enough about that. And those teams are out there. I mean, Memphis isn't the only team with big guys, and you have to be able to contend with that. You don't get to a championship unless you can handle all kinds of teams, and Perkins definitely helps them in situations like that. And I think he's been motivated since Miami. You guys have seen more of him. Maybe you got a different opinion, but I think that was something that maybe lit a little fire.
Anthony, what about Perk's performance? What do you think sparks it?
I think he has been good since the Miami game, but I thought he was actually pretty good in that stretch before, pretty much this whole kind of, 12 out of 13 win streak. He had a good game in Houston. He's had a few good games. I think matchups have helped him. And then, Memphis, he defended really well, even though he didn't score much. And offensively, I think he's looked better. He even, in Brooklyn, he drove on Kevin Garnett for a layup. Last night, he goes and gets an and one. I think he's looking a little bit more spry. Maybe his knees are feeling a little bit better. But I think he's been good the last month. And it's not like he was bad in the Miami game. He just didn't matter, so he didn't play.
Darnell, how has Kevin Durant's performance and leadership factored in Perk's play lately?
I think what you're seeing with Kevin Durant as a passer has really helped his teammates the most out of anything he's done. You're seeing Perk get easy scoring opportunities. Even when other guys miss shots, Perk is right there to rebound because Kevin Durant is drawing so much attention. He's taking a defender away from the basket, and that's allowing Perk to really get rebounds and be a threat inside in the paint. So, just leadership standpoint, I think anybody who is seeing what Kevin Durant's doing, any of his teammates, they'd be nuts to not follow along and elevate their level of play once you're seeing what Kevin Durant's doing. So I think that's kind of what we've seen also out of Kendrick Perkins.
Yeah, and to go along with that point, I mean, with the way Durant's playing, defenses more and more want to send more attention. And if you're going to send, anybody's defender, you're going to send Kendrick Perkins' defender. As we saw in Miami, you're sending Badier, you're sending probably whoever's guarding Perkins, and that really has opened him up, to Darnell's point.
Okay, Russell Westbrook question of the week. Are we wrong to assume he'll be back shortly after the All-Star break? Could it even be before? Darnell.
Well, I think that ship has sailed. The Oklahomans' sort of unofficial pool was all of us were wrong. I think Slater had the Miami game. Barry had January 27th. I had the Memphis game this past Monday. I guess that was February 3rd. So we were all wrong. And it looks like it's going to be post All-Star break. The fact that they're playing so well at this point, they won 12 out of 13. There's no rush. There's no reason to rush him back at this point. You're going to have about a week off after the All-Star break. So I think they're going to try to use that rest wisely and use that time wisely for him to get some rest, as much rest as possible. So I don't see him coming back before the All-Star break.
Jenny, I'm guessing that Millie has him coming back after the All-Star break too. But do you agree with Darnell? It seems like that's what that would set up perfectly. A couple days of practice that they had not, they wouldn't have otherwise to reintegrate him in, and then here comes the heat.
Yeah, Millie's no dummy. She thinks it's after the All-Star break too. And I think that I'm of the opinion that had they not been playing very well, after that 5-5 point that has sort of now become a touchstone, maybe they would have brought him back sooner. We've talked before about his pain tolerance, and I really do believe he has a high one. And maybe it's possible that he could have been ready to come back and just said, you know what, I'm going to tough it out and try to get this team going. But when they started playing better, I think it was maybe some motivation to say, let's make sure that things are absolutely healed 100%. Let's not rush him back. So now they've got a little more time to play with. And frankly, who knows? Maybe he could have come back earlier and been fine and had no problems. But this gives him a little bit more of a cushion to say, let's make sure everything's absolutely where it needs to be before he comes back. This team hasn't, I don't know how you can say this team hasn't needed Russell Westbrook, but they've done fine in his absence here these last few weeks. So just to get him healthy and as well as he can be, I think that's where they're at right now.
Of course, the Thunder has Friday night, Anthony, you're with them in Orlando, then Sunday versus the Knicks here in Oklahoma City. Last two games, a West Coast swing. In Portland on Tuesday, Thursday night, late night with the Lakers on TNT. Then it's the All-Star break. Come back from that, and then it starts with LeBron James and the Heat. And then right after that, the trade deadline. Sam Presti seems to always do something with this team at the trade deadline. Darnell, you've written about it, that Thabo Sefolosha's name is sort of blowing in the wind. You've also sort of talked about how implausible all that sounds. Still think Thabo will finish the season with the Thunder?
I think so. The reason I think he's out there, his name is out there in trade rumors, is because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this year. Unless they agree to a contract extension by June 30th. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. The Thunder's got a lot of other things they got to worry about, primarily Reggie Jackson's extension. He's eligible for an extension this summer, so I think they want to square that away first before worrying about Thabo Sefolosha. But and the Thunder has never really let a guy get away. Kevin Martin was an exception last year. Because his dollar value was just too much for the Thunder. He was always a one-year rental, but they've always tried to maximize their asset and flip it for something else. Eric Maynard, Jeff Green, James Harden, we've seen it before. So that's why Thabo Sefolosha's name is out there. But to me, he's just so pivotal to this team's defense in a playoff series. And I mean, you can go from round one to the NBA Finals. There's going to be a matchup or several matchups that you're going to desperately need Thabo Sefolosha for. And if you don't have him or a guy like him, then I don't think the Thunder has as good a chance to win a title. So I don't see them trading Thabo Sefolosha. I'd be shocked if Sam Presti pulled the trigger on a deal for Thabo. And if he did, expect it to be a sweetheart of a deal.
Anthony, they have an open roster spot. they had the trade exception that came in the Darnell, was it the Eric Maynard trade? Oh, no, it was the Kevin Martin and the Eric Maynard trade. They've got trade exceptions from those. Anthony, is there a deal out there that is plausible for the Thunder that makes sense for this team?
The Eric Maynard's the only one that they would likely use now. The Kevin Martin one expires in the summer, and it's $6 million. So I mean that's something they could possibly use in the summer. The Maynard one's $2 million, and I think they maneuver themselves so they could use it. I don't know that they necessarily will. Guys like Gary Neal's making $3-5 million, so you'd have to maybe add something. But he's kind of an interesting name that we've thrown around. Darnell said something the other day on the podcast. Anthony Morrow from the Pelicans, who are kind of out of the playoff race. He's a really good shooter in this team. I mean, that's still their one area. I mean, they're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. So I think maybe it's going to be something like maybe a minor shooter. If anything, it might be kind of like remember last year they went out and got Ronnie Brewer, and everyone was like, oh, could this matter? And, he didn't even break the rotation. I don't know if there's anyone out there right now that they can get for cheap that can break into this rotation. Just because, it's kind of stacked, and the only guy you could see maybe coming out of it is Derek Fisher, but can you really see him coming out of it with Scott Brooks as the coach?
Jenni, how about it? Can this team roll into the playoffs and be the Western Conference favorite and a NBA Finals or contender or favorite with the team set up as it is now, adding a healthy Westbrook?
I think if this is the playoff group that they go in with, I think they have to feel pretty good about it. Now, obviously every year since the year they made the finals, we've said, is there anybody out there that could be a LeBron negator? And, obviously everybody wants that guy defensively. So I'm not sure that there's anybody that fits that bill perfectly in the league that you can go out and get. To me, they're not going over the salary cap no matter what, even if they feel like they've got a great chance to make a deep playoff run. So you got to start right there. And, I'm with Darnell in terms of, Cephalosha. It's not the same sort of deal if you're getting to the end of his contract like you would be if you're getting to the end of James Harden's contract or the end of Jeff Green's contract. And we saw them pull triggers on those guys as mainstay pieces. And it made sense. I don't know if you feel sort of the urgency with Thabo. He's obviously a starter. He's obviously a huge part of what they do. But, you see Andre Robertson going back and forth between here and Tulsa, getting playing time, like Jeremy Lamb did a year ago, like Perry Jones did a year ago. And you think, well, are they getting him ready? Are they grooming them to make that next jump in? And I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that. Is he as good as Thabo? No, but, it's not. I don't think it's too far off to say maybe they're setting him up to be that guy down the road.
Anthony, you first, and then Darnell. Deal or no deal at the deadline for Sam Presti?
I don't think so. Not the way they're playing lately. Not with kind of all the cheap assets they have, because I don't see anyone breaking into their rotation without taking somebody out, and I don't think they want to take anyone out. So, no, I don't think so. I think they're banking on Westbrook coming back and being healthy.
Darnell, deal or no deal?
Deal. Sam Presti cannot help himself. He's got assets. He's got needs. He's got 2 roster spots. He's got the Eric Maynard trade that's just going to go into the wind if he doesn't use it. So I say he's going to deal.
Thanks, guys. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday on News OK Live, but you can stay with the best team anywhere, every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. And remember, Thunder Thursday is brought to you by our friends at Wheeler Chevrolet. Make that drive down I-40. Save yourself some time and money.